and welcome to MCTV's Let's Talk. I'm Mike Stanzilis, the Vice President of Membership and Government Affairs for the Morris County Chamber of Commerce. And today we have Ken Warman as our guest in a member spotlight. So Ken, he's the founder of the Leaders Evolution, a leadership consulting firm with the mission to build and develop successful people, great leaders, and high-performing teams. Ken has led teams as a chief financial officer, chief operating officer, and head of a consulting practice for a Fortune 50 company, of course, Prudential Financial. We've all heard of that one. So he joined the Morris County Chamber of Commerce last year, and right away, Ken took on some leadership roles in the HR and Talent Committee and currently leads our CFO Peer Group Forum. Now, Ken worked also as a facilitator at Seton Hall in the Leadership Development Program and serves as the financial liaison for the board of Drumthwacket Foundation in Princeton, New Jersey. And Drumthwacket is the governor's residence. So Ken also grew up Basking Ridge, New Jersey, a very successful athlete, graduated from Lehigh University, and he's actively involved as an alumni there. So Ken, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Well, we're really blessed to have you here with us today, Ken. So let's just get right to it. Ken, in our pre-production talk, you told me a little bit about a huge transition you went through a couple years ago to go off and start the Leaders Evolution. Basically, you went off on your own, jumped off the cliff and started your own company, the Leaders Evolution. What was it that drove you to take that huge leap?
Sure. Well, first off, I had the opportunity to hit the pause button and go through some deep reflection about my career and what I wanted to do next. And thankfully, I took that time. I reflected upon a couple of things. One, what my why was, what was my purpose. And interestingly, I hadn't thought about that for quite some time. I think a lot of leaders don't. We get into the business of performing and leading. And I took a long pause and I said, what is it that I want to do? What impact can I have on the world? And I also thought about what I was really good at, what I love to do and what my strengths were. And I think at the intersection of those 2 points, it just kept screaming at me, it's about leadership, Ken. It's about sharing your gift with other people, coaching, teaching, guiding others to do exactly the mission that you described that my company has followed. I went back and got my leadership coaching certification and launched my company called the Leaders Evolution. And over the last couple of years, I've been doing just that. And I have to say, every day is a fulfilling day when you're following your purpose. And I love to work with leaders either directly or in small businesses, medium to larger size organizations. But it's all about really helping them achieve their goals and driving them forward in their growth journey as a leader.
Well, thank you for that. And I clearly couldn't agree with you more in terms of the development needed for leaders, especially in today's day and age. But the Leaders Evolution, what is it? How'd you come up with that name, the Leaders Evolution?
Yeah, well, we all are on this journey through life. And many of us, virtually all of us, become a leader at some point. Now, for a small business owner, it's very clear. For leaders within an organization that have a title, it becomes very clear that they want to aspire and become a leader. But leaders are all around us. Sometimes it's just leading a team within an organization. So positional authority isn't necessarily required. For many of us, it's being a leader within our family, or maybe even as part of a nonprofit or a religious organization. But what I have observed and what I have learned over my many years of studying it is that leadership truly is an evolution. And I firmly believe this. It's not just one specific event. It's not one particular act or experience that shapes us. It's actually something that gets developed and evolves over the period of our entire lives. And that's really what I and my company focus on. It's that evolution for the leader, helping them through that process, at times challenging it, at times being a catalyst, providing that sounding board, that guidance to be able to become the strongest leader that they can be. And that's the area that we focus on, and that's the reason why I called it the Leaders Evolution.
Well, clearly you are describing this great journey. Why does someone need a coach, Ken? Can you teach people leadership, or really can they learn it?
Yeah, well, the answer to that question is, the last question is yes. It absolutely can be learned. And I would phrase it as the benefits of having a coach. What are they? First of all, in every relationship, at least as I've been a coach, there are two or three fundamental foundational things that always seem to emerge. The first is is a goal or specific goals in mind that the person wants to achieve. Maybe they want to become a better leader. Maybe they're a small business owner and they just want their business to run better, and they realize that they have a big impact on that. Maybe they want to achieve their fullest potential and they don't feel that they've gotten there yet. But there are specific goals that we frame that come from the individual, and we work towards achieving those goals. The second key thing that always seems to be present is the focus on change and being able to change. We all come with certain wiring, that the experiences that have crafted us and shaped us up to this point in our lives. And then we try to do something different, and we need to grow, and we need to develop, and we need to try new things. And a coach can really, really be valuable as an asset to help guide you through that change, to be a catalyst for you in that particular area. And the third really value that I see, at least in the coaching that I do, we oftentimes get very focused on fulfillment and happiness. It's not necessarily where we might start, but oftentimes there's a challenge, there's a rub, there's a difficulty. And when we focus on that and we overcome it, the individual is just better. They're happier, they're more fulfilled, and they become the best versions of themselves. And that is not just in their career, but oftentimes transcends all areas of their life, whether it's being a parent, a spouse, whatever. It's a lot around fulfillment. And so that's actually my favorite part, when we get to that point with someone that I'm coaching or with a group that I'm working with.
Yeah, so you mentioned goals. Typically you set a goal and you have to have some way to measure that goal. So you're talking to a leader. How do you know what you're doing as a coach is effective? How do you measure those goals? Because you're really getting that person's sort of side of the story in a very sort of subjective way, anecdotally, I guess, you're coaching them, and then they're going back to their jobs and using some of the advice or skill sets you're imparting on them. But how do you know it's working?
Yeah, couple ways. First of all, in some instances, particularly if people are trusting and they're courageous, if they allow feedback to be provided, right? They invite me into their forum, whether that be their company, their work group. We can get inputs in terms of feedback, assessments, other things to shape progress, right? And we can see, okay, where are we today? And then 4 months, 6 months, 10 months later, how have we done? Have we grown? Have we evolved? How would you rate us or provide feedback on the leader? And those opportunities are great because it allows you to, as you say, sort of measure the progress around it. So that's a wonderful way to do it. But quite frankly, the truth is there. And if you have a leader that is authentic, it comes through in their stories, right? In the beginning of the conversations, in the beginning of the coaching, there are a lot of stories probably about conflict, about challenge, about things that aren't working. And over time, naturally, as you begin to evolve and the leadership becomes stronger, those stories begin to change. They become more positive. The leader starts talking about, at times, things that they've done wrong and how they're going to work to change it. The whole specter of it, particularly if you have guided and led people and coached people for as long as I have, you can tell. You can tell that growth. And by the way, the individual can tell as well. If they're true to themselves and true to you, and of course, the whole framework of this is built on trust and honesty and authenticity. They know, they clearly know. And then it's a very natural equation that the people around them recognize that growth, and they acknowledge it, and they show it as being very, very positive.
Yeah, it's all about this journey, this evolution, hence the name of your company, right? Really, it is an evolution. We've all worked for some really good leaders and some poor leaders, whether it's in work, whether it's been a coach. And give us some examples of some common mistakes that you see leaders make. And also, why don't you give us some personal examples of some of the mistakes you've made that you've learned from along the way?
Yeah. Some of the most common ones that I see are a leader, particularly a new leader, feeling like they need to have all the answers. They need to be the smartest person in the room. They need to solve all the problems. And one of the areas in which I see a lot of people evolve through my coaching, and certainly I evolved, was that that's not necessarily the case. The great leader actually rallies people around them to be the ones to help solve the problems, right? It's drawing in the contributions of the people that you have on your team that, quite frankly, I think is the truest and most valuable impact that a leader can have. So that's a big one. I would say, you asked me about personal examples. Early on in my career, I talked too much and I didn't listen enough. When I would have meetings or I would have one-on-ones and I reflect back, on that leader, I felt like I needed to drive the meeting, drive the conversation, be the one that would instigate everything. And I realized with maturity that actually wasn't the right approach, that I should have been asking a lot more questions and then just stopping and listening, and then providing input on that path or that direction. And thankfully, it was something that I learned over time. And now, as a coach of other leaders, I spend a lot of time drawing that out in them and having them see the benefits of that. So, a couple things that I stumbled across early on in my career, and thankfully with maturity and teaching and seeing the great, wonderful example of others, I learned it all along my journey.
Yeah, so, you mentioned the ability to listen, not have to be the smartest person in the room. Let's talk a little bit about that, okay? That takes vulnerability, and there's a lot of talk about vulnerability in leadership, and especially since the Dare to Lead TED Talk by Brene Brown. What do you think about in terms of teaching vulnerability, but learning vulnerability? Can people learn it? You can teach it all you want, but can they learn it?
They can, no doubt in my mind. There's a progression around it. I remember coaching one individual, and he was like, "Yeah, I'll ask questions in a meeting." And I said, "But you can't ask all the questions that you know the answers to. You got to ask the questions that you don't know the answers to." And he wasn't so fond of that in the beginning, but realized the benefit of that over time, right? Really and truly, it's not just about asking questions and then essentially you listen and then you tell people what the answer is. That's not all that helpful in the long run. And so it does need to be real vulnerability. You want to draw the team members that you have truly into the circle of bringing their best ideas, their best skills. We all go out and spend a tremendous amount of time like hiring people or attracting people around us that we think are really capable, that have wonderful resumes and experience. And then, for what? Well, we want to draw them in and ask them the really tough questions, and then sit back and listen, facilitate, moderate, understand. And then, of course, as a leader, oftentimes you're looked to make the ultimate decision. But you got to draw people in and get them to participate and have them to be active. And in so doing, you have to show the vulnerability of, hey, I don't know the answer to this question, guys. We're facing a real big problem here with COVID in terms of affecting our business. I need the best ideas of everybody. What do you think we should do? And then boom, it's progression, progression, progression. Many of us are threatened by that because leaders are not used to that. Typically, they tend to be high achievers. They've done really well in athletics, in music, in academics, and everything else. And they're used to having all the answers and not necessarily having the questions. But what with the power that comes with a leader that is able to make that growth and learn that skill. And I would say it's all a spectrum, Mike. There are certain wirings that we come to the table with where we might be a little bit lower on the empathy scale or on the ability to be vulnerable. But to me, it's all about growth and progression. Can we teach that individual to move to the other side, if you will, and to become more empathetic? We all have it in us. We all know that for when, you know, a loved one dies, or the care that we give to the people that are most important to us. So we all have it within us. It's a matter of bringing that out, sort of training that muscle and that ability to be used more and more with the people around us, and particularly with the teams that we lead.
So you perfectly segued from vulnerability into empathy, two qualities that really, if you go back not too long ago, were considered weaknesses, especially vulnerability in leaders, right? So there's been this incredible transition in leadership today. Let me ask you, Ken, why do you think there are so few great leaders out there?
Yeah, I mean, I could give you a lot of systemic reasons around that.
Mhm.
I think in the academic arena, the wonderful educational system that we have, at least here in the United States, I can comment on it. You know, what did you get in your leadership courses, Mike? We don't have them, right? And so, like, even in higher education, when I interact with some of the wonderful schools that I work with, they will acknowledge and admit that, you know, 97 to 98% of their resources are focused on technical attributes, and not necessarily things like emotional intelligence or building strong teams or leadership. It's an area of great opportunity. So there's sort of a structural, systemic thing that exists there. I think as well, a lot of our organizations, many times people would look to our companies, our organizations, to help guide us through the leadership journey. Well, you know, after the financial crisis of 2008, 2009, a lot of people pulled back on those types of programs in terms of building their next generation of leaders. There's been a great squeeze in that particular area, and therefore many of us who previously would have been cultivated in that particular arena, our companies, you know, we're not getting the same level of care, you know, in that particular area. But, you know, the biggest reason why there's not a lot of great leaders, Mike, is because it's very hard. It takes humility, it takes sacrifice, it takes a servant leadership mindset, it takes courage, it takes great energy, it takes the ability to stretch and adapt to lots of different conditions. It's not easy to be a great leader. And in essence, because of that, that's why I've dedicated my company, my life really, to helping people become that great leader that we aspire to be. Because when we are able to do it, people notice. Everybody recognizes great leadership when they see it, especially now. The fact that it's less and less in our society, when people see it, when they get the opportunity to work for someone who's a great leader or be around them, they recognize it, Mike, and they give their best discretionary effort, and they want to stay with that company as long as possible, and they want to learn from that individual. And ultimately, those individuals and the teams that they build then go out into the world and they solve the big problems and they do great things. And ultimately, it's not just about, well, we made a leader better, but we accomplished real good in the world. And that's why I do what I do, and why I love working with my clients and my coachees, because ultimately they're brilliant. And when they go out and do greatness in the world, boy, that makes me feel really amazing and fulfilled.
So those are outstanding words to close up on. You know, people are craving great leaders, and you use some amazing words. Service, right? Courage, humility. So we're going to close on that. We are looking for great leaders. We love great leaders, and Ken Warman of the Leaders Evolution is definitely helping us cultivate great leaders of the present and the future. Ken, thank you so much for being here today.
Mike, it was really my pleasure. I think it's wonderful that you have this forum to talk to people and get their perspectives on things. And I'm so happy and humbled to be part of the show here. So thanks so much for the interview and the discussion.
Thank you, and thank you to all of our chamber members and our chamber community. And we want to show you our support. So we just thank you for being here, and thank you for your membership.